What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. I'm Harrison, and today is What is Tutorial Tuesday? Tutorial Tuesdays. Every single Tuesday, I teach you how to draw some of your favorite characters.
I am Lord Frieza. None surpass me. No one even comes close. Burn this into your mind. I am Emperor of the Universe. The likes of you are only fit to grovel at my feet.
Today, we are drawing one of the baddest villains in Dragon Ball Z, Frieza. I have always thought that Frieza is the most fearsome and evil villains in all of Dragon Ball Z throughout the whole Namekian saga, and even his return in Dragon Ball Super. I just find him to be the most evil, chaotic villain. It's like Joker to the Batman. He just can't die and never stops becoming more than who he is, and I love him for that, and I think he's a great villain. So grab your pencils, pens, sketchbooks, Dragon Balls, and let's instant transmission into this one. So starting with a nice round oval in the center of your page, we're going to plot out Frieza's head. Just off to the sides of the lower third of the head shape, we can add the cylinder cones for his ears. They're going to be on an angular slope facing down. It seems very awkward, but trust me, if you just follow along, it'll look right in the end. If it helps you, you can make guidelines going across the entire face so that everything is lined up on the same plane. Guidelines are never your enemy. If you need to add 100 to get the result that you're looking for, add them. It will always help. They will never hurt. Now, to plot the rest of the body, we're only going to be putting him on his upper torso. So at the base of the ears and the chin, draw 2 lines down for his neck, draw 2 lines out from there to draw his trap muscles, and then add 2 little bumps on the ends to give him his shoulders. Now that we have our lines plotted, we can go in and start solidifying some of the outlines and shape of his head. Now I dropped in his neck muscle lines just to give it a little definition. Today's tutorial is kind of backwards. We're starting with the torso detail first and then moving on to the head, so it's gonna be a wild one, guys. But now we can start indicating his upper pectoral muscles, and this just looks like if you squashed the letter M and like stretched it out. So if you think of it like an M across his chest, that will do you wonders. And then you can add a few little other details on his clavicle and his neck. Now jumping back up to the head, we're gonna draw his shiny little like glassy head thing. I don't know. And that's going to take up 1/3 of the top of his head. You're going to draw a letter U and then have it swoop off on the edges. And then the base of that should be really rounded. For me, it took a couple tries to make it look just right, to get the right width, get the right height and depth. So if you need to erase and do it a few times, do it. There's no reason why you should get your drawing right on the first go around ever. And then we can indicate the shine on the top of his head and then add a few little circles for like the glint and glimmer. And now for his facial details. So Frieza's pissed, always. So we can go ahead and draw all of his facial features very expressively angry. For his eyebrows, we're gonna just draw them straight angle down. And we can't forget the classic Dragon Ball Z thick eyebrow lines. So those, if you can imagine the letter L on its side, and just really stretched out. That's kind of the shape you're going for. His eyes are almost the same exact shape of the eyebrow line, just a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. So just think of them as letter L's that are just really elongated in either direction. Now for his nose, it's a little tiny W shape. And then his mouth, he's got his most maniacal, sinister smile going, so we can drop in that box shape. If you want to have him with a smirk, feel free to do that. I debated if I wanted his classic like smirk or if I wanted his full teethy smile, and I ultimately landed with the smile just because I thought it gave a little bit more cynicism to the drawing. And then plump up his lips. He does have that black lip. We want to make sure we get it. Add the pupils, and then we can shade in any area that we want to be inked black. And what I've decided to do here is a little bit different than most of the drawings in Tutorial Tuesday thus far. I am leaving Frieza at this stage of his torso. He's not getting the rest of his body. He's not getting any further arms. He's going to be just like this, kind of like a torso bust, like if you see a statuette and it's just like the top of the pecs to the head. That's pretty much what we're doing here. So we're going to be wrapping Frieza in a frame and then filling in the rest of the page with black ink eventually. So what you're going to want to do if you're following along is draw a thin outline around our drawing, just so there's enough space in between Frieza's actual body and the background, just so that there's a little bit of separation. You don't have to choose to do this if you don't want to. It's something different. It kind of makes the character pop off the page, especially since Frieza is all white. It'll really help break up your character from the background. And then the last thing I'm doing before we get onto the inking is just giving it a little bit more shape to the body, just so that it's not a floating neck. So we're going to add a little bit more definition, kind of frame off the bottom of the torso. And what I did was just kind of angle that shape into a point. I was really thinking about one of those busts that are just from the pecs up and how they are cut off either mid-pec, below the pec, and that's kind of what I did here. It did take a little bit of trial and error to get the right shape, but eventually I got it to a place where I was content with. And then the last thing I did was add just some pectoral muscle definition, dashed in a few lines just to show the separation of the muscles. And then now to get into the inking, I am using my trusty dip pen and brush today. So I am sorry if you're getting used to me using fine liners, but we are switching back to the dip pen and brush. If you don't already have one, you do not need to own one to ink this drawing. You can easily accomplish this inking with a fine liner, a ballpoint pen. If you want to do it with a pencil, you can. You're going to be following the same techniques. It's just a matter of applying more pressure, adding a thicker line to achieve the desired inking effect that you would like. What I'm doing, as always, is starting left to right, top to bottom, and with the dip pen, I am just applying a certain amount of pressure to achieve the inking line that I want. If I want a thinner line, I will press a little lighter. If I want a thicker line, I will add more pressure. Using this dip pen is all about applying different types of pressure to achieve the inking effect that you really desire. It's a lot of control. You need to practice this a lot. It's not something you could just pick up right away and have great inking right out of the get-go. There are often times where I even struggle trying to achieve certain techniques. It's a tool that I feel you never truly master, especially if you're trying out different nibs. There's always something that will throw you off, and I find it fun because it kind of keeps you on your toes and keeps you always trying to learn and find new ways to ink. So if you are interested in learning more about the dip pen, let me know down in the comments and I can recommend which one to use. I can eventually do a tutorial on how I use the dip pen for my inking purposes, and hopefully it might help and influence you guys. So now to fill in the background with ink, I waited a few minutes, about 15 to 20-ish, for the ink to set and dry. I didn't want my hand to smudge it or ruin any of the inks that we just laid down. So before I fill in the entire page, I really wanted to make sure that those inks were set and dry. Using a brush, I'm dipping right into my inkwell and filling in the entire background. And with this, there's no specific technique. We are just brushing and filling in the area. Black ink is very nice because it does lend itself to blending in. You don't really have any streaks or smudges or smears, so it's kind of nice. And then you can see I'm using my finer detail brush to get really close to Frieza. I didn't want the big bristles from my brush to accidentally come into the line and then potentially onto our character. So using a fine tip detail brush really helps me get in closer and not have to worry that any of the ink is going to flow out of the lines. And it also helps to fill in his forehead glass type piece, and we don't have to worry again about the ink spilling out or accidentally getting brushed into another area that we don't want filled with black ink. And the last thing we want to do is just wait 15 to 20 more minutes, let those inks set and dry. When you go into erase, you don't want to smudge any of your ink, especially here. There is so much black ink that if you start to erase when it's wet, you're just going to end up with a completely blacked out page, and I'm almost positive that's not why you're here. So wait that 15 to 20 minutes. You might want to wait a few extra more just because there's so much more ink on this page that it could be wet. My pages actually started to crinkle and bow, so I had to wait a little bit. I wanted to flatten it out. So as soon as it dried, I laid it down, closed the sketchbook, and laid a few extra weights on top so that it would be flat. And using my kneaded eraser, I went in, lightly erased, going in a circular motion until all of our pencils were gone. And here we have it. Here is Frieza. This was so much fun. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the torso bust kind of image. I really struggled with what I wanted to do with the composition of this piece. I really like the way Frieza looks. If maybe I could have just cut it off from the pecs up and maybe not have done the torso frame, it kind of feels weird, but I really committed to it, so it is what it is. And sometimes that's kind of what happens with your art. You commit to a specific idea and it either works out very well, it is a nice surprise, or it's just awful and you either have to fix it or live with it, and I am choosing to live with it. And sometimes as an artist, that's all we can do. I am really happy with the way this turned out. I think it's a nice fun piece to have in my sketchbook, and I hope you learned a lot in today's lesson. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Once you do, hit that bell notification so you know when I upload the next tutorial. If for some reason you not enjoy this video, please let me know in the comments below what I can do to learn how to draw And on that note, if there's a character that you would love to know how to draw but have yet to see in the playlist, please let me know who that character is down in the comments and I will gladly add them to our ongoing list. Thank you so much for joining me. So much fun. I really hope you liked it. If you've been following along with Tutorial Tuesday for the last 5 months, or you're brand new to our series, please follow me on social media. I would love to see the work of years ago. You can also follow me on social media and see what I am doing day to day and seeing all the little mini tutorials that I'm posting regularly. Thanks again for joining me. I will see you next week with another awesome tutorial. Keep practicing, keep drawing, never give up, and have fun. Bye.
Oh my! This is stupendous! Wow! What a great show! Unbelievable! Look at that!